God's chosen one. The real reason you keep forgetting dreams, it's not what you think. You didn't forget your dream by accident. Heaven shielded it. You ever wake up, heart racing, soul heavy, like you were somewhere important but can't remember where? That wasn't just a dream. That was an encounter, a whisper from the realm where God trains his chosen in silence. You weren't abandoned. You were being hidden. Not from the enemy, but for your assignment. The dreams you forgot, they were sealed scrolls, waiting for the day your spirit could carry the weight of what they truly meant. And if your nights have felt heavier lately, if your dreams slip through your fingers like smoke, then listen closely, because heaven hasn't forgotten. It's you who's about to remember. If you're one of God's chosen, then this message was written in heaven with your name on it. The ick you can't name. Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning and felt displaced, like your body was home, but your soul hadn't caught up yet? There's a silence that greets you before the alarm even rings. A heaviness, not depression, not fear, just knowing. Knowing something happened while you were asleep. Something sacred, something massive, but now it's gone. The dream erased. The details vanished. Just a tug in your chest, a feeling behind your ribs, like a sealed envelope you're not allowed to open. Yet, you lay there, eyes blinking at the ceiling, whispering, God, why do I forget the dreams that feel the most real? Let me tell you what no one else will say out loud. You didn't forget your dream. God encrypted it, because if the enemy ever saw what you saw in that dream, if he ever touched what heaven placed in your spirit, he'd launch an attack you're not yet equipped to withstand. So God hid it, not to punish you, but to preserve you. My heart instructs me in the night seasons, and some of you have been taught that dreams are just fiction. But those of you who are chosen, you've always felt different, haven't you? You didn't just dream of flying. You saw a place you'd never been. You heard a voice that felt like home. You became someone you didn't recognize, but somehow always knew. And then it faded. But what if I told you? That forgotten dream was not a loss. It was a transfer, a sacred download, sealed until your spirit had grown strong enough to carry what your mind couldn't yet comprehend. What if every ache, every restless night, every forgotten vision was not failure but formation? If your spirit is bearing witness right now, then stay with me, because the dream you thought you lost is about to come back, not as a memory, but as a mission. Part 1, your dreams are sealed because your purpose is dangerous. Atlanta, Georgia. A quiet apartment complex just outside the city. A chilly dawn breeze moves through the blinds. Streetlights still flicker. A woman lies awake, staring at the ceiling with eyes that have seen too much and remember too little. The forgotten dream. Maya hadn't dreamed in months, or at least that's what she told Dr. Colton. Every morning she woke up with the same feeling, a weight behind her ribs, like something important had been stolen in the night. Sometimes she swore her pillow was wet with tears she didn't remember crying. Other mornings she woke up gripping her chest, her heart racing like it had run through fire. And yet nothing. No images, no storylines, just echoes. That's just unresolved trauma, Dr. Colton said, gently tapping his clipboard. Your brain is protecting you by forgetting. That's science. But it didn't feel like science. It felt like spiritual surgery. Something's chasing me, but I can't see it. There were nights Maya would sit bolt upright at 3:33 a.m., not 3:32, not 3:34, always 3:33. And each time she felt it, a pressure in the room, not malevolent, not peaceful, just charged, like something had been there and left in a hurry. She told her mother Rosa about it one morning as the sun crept through the kitchen blinds. Rosa didn't even flinch. She just stirred her tea and whispered, "The veil is thinning, baby. That's not insomnia. That's instruction." Maya blinked. "Instruction? You're being given something while you sleep. But God don't want you remembering it yet. It's too holy to be handled with flesh still on it." Maya didn't know whether to cry or fall to her knees. Why would God hide something from me? That night, Maya cried out to God. Not a polished prayer, a real one. Ugly, trembling, raw. "Lord, why would you speak to me in dreams and then make me forget them?" She waited. Nothing. But in the morning, as she reached for her Bible, it fell open to Jeremiah 1:1-5. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." She felt it before she read it. Goosebumps across her spine. This wasn't coincidence. This was confirmation. What if it was too sacred to remember? As the days went on, Maya began noticing something strange. Though she couldn't remember her dreams, her waking life started shifting. She'd walk into a room and know exactly what was about to happen. A scripture would flash through her mind, and an hour later, someone would quote it word for word. A woman at the store touched her arm and whispered, "I don't know why, but I feel like I've seen you before." Maya hadn't remembered anything, but something in her spirit had. The dream hadn't disappeared. It had downloaded. You didn't forget you were encrypted. One evening, Maya sat in bed with her Bible, open eyes, heavy spirit alert. She asked God one more time, "Why do you keep hiding these dreams from me?" This time she heard it not audibly but deep in her spirit, "Because what I gave you wasn't for now. It's for the war that hasn't arrived yet." Suddenly she saw herself standing on a stage, speaking words she hadn't written, ministering to people she didn't know, with a fire she hadn't learned. She gasped. Was that the dream? No, it was the reality the dream had been preparing her for. Maya woke up the next morning feeling different, not lighter, not louder, but aligned. She still couldn't remember her dreams, but she no longer needed to, because now she knew she wasn't losing them. She was becoming them. Part 2. Why you've been dreaming in Code Austin, Texas, a 24-hour diner just off a quiet highway. Neon flickers over chipped linoleum. It's 2:17 a.m., the kind of place where only night workers, lost souls, and angels with strange assignments show up. A waking up, paralyzed Jordan never told anyone what happened 3 nights ago. He woke up frozen, not just tired, paralyzed, eyes wide open, mouth unable to move. A pressure on his chest like someone was sitting on it. He could see his alarm clock glowing red in the dark. Hours, 44 a.m. But more than fear, what haunted him was this. He knew someone had just left the room. A warrior with no war. Jordan hadn't been to church since Afghanistan, hadn't prayed in years. But lately he'd started seeing numbers on his route. 55722-144, always repeating, always whispering, and that pressure in the night. It didn't feel demonic. It felt like a test, like someone was watching to see what he'd do. He asked Mrs. Lyle as she refilled his coffee, "Do you ever feel like your dreams are trying to say something, but in a language you don't understand?" She nodded slowly. "Baby, you're not crazy. You're in class. When the world talks in codes." "Mrs.?" Lyle leaned closer, eyes, gentle voice, low. "The chosen ones, we don't dream like everybody else. We dream in codes. God don't always give you words. Sometimes he gives you patterns, numbers, a child's face, a hallway that loops, an ocean with no shore." Jordan blinked. He had dreamed of that ocean, the endless one. "What if I never decode it?" he asked. "You're not meant to decode it," she whispered. "You're meant to carry it until it manifests." The man in the corner. At that moment, the man in the corner gray hoodie, never ordered a thing, stood up. He walked past Jordan and paused. "Job 33, he said without looking, verses 14 to 16. Then he left. Jordan pulled out his phone. For God speaks again and again, though people do not recognize it. He speaks in dreams, in visions of the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they lie in their beds. When silence speaks louder than memory. Jordan went home that night and didn't sleep, not because he was afraid, but because for the first time in years, he knew he was being watched, not by demons, not by trauma, but by heaven. His dreams had been encrypted because the message wasn't for the mind, it was for the mission. And until he walked into that mission, God would keep speaking in code, so the enemy couldn't trace it. And now, every time Jordan wakes up sweating, he doesn't panic. He writes it down. The hallway, the red thread, the voice that didn't speak but still roared, because one day soon he knows. The code will crack. The scene will match reality. The dream will become the door, and he'll be ready to walk through it. Part 3, 333, wasn't just a time. It was a wake-up code. Charlotte, North Carolina, a small craftsman-style house nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac. Lavender grows along the porch railings. Inside, the air smells of chamomile tea and pages torn from journals. The time that haunts your clock. For 12 nights straight, Denise woke at 3:33 a.m., always the same, always alert, not groggy, not confused, just awake, as if someone had called her name from across a veil. She tried praying, tried sage, tried ignoring it, tried Googling it. Was it the devil? Was it anxiety? Was it nothing? What if that number was a code? One night, Denise whispered into the darkness, "God, if this is you, I'm listening, but please, say it in a language I can understand." No answer. Until the next afternoon, when she texted Alana asking, "Have you ever woken up at 3:33 over and over?" Alana didn't reply with a theory. Just a verse. Jeremiah 33:3, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Denise dropped her phone. Her hands began to shake. She had heard that before. Suddenly a memory flickered. Her grandmother's voice, soft Southern sacred, once said during a bedtime prayer, "Baby girl, 3:33 ain't just numbers. That's when heaven opens a scroll." She had dismissed it as bedtime poetry. Until now. Denise grabbed her dream journal half empty and started writing anyway. Not details, just patterns, colors, feelings. A blue staircase, a woman in white, a humming sound like wings, no plot, no faces, just soul imprints. When random turns prophetic. That weekend at a small church service, the guest preacher paused mid-sermon, looked directly at her. "Someone here's been waking at 3:33 a.m. thinking you're crazy. You're not. It's God's alarm. He's been trying to show you something, but not through memory, through alignment." Denise felt like her entire bloodstream turned electric. It was never just a time, it was a seal. She finally got it. 3:33 wasn't a haunting, it was a signature. God was marking her spirit with timestamps her mind didn't yet understand. The number wasn't just a prompt, it was a promise. "Call to me and I will answer you." She hadn't lost a dream. She had received a blueprint. It just hadn't unsealed yet. Now, when 3:33 comes, Denise doesn't reach for the light. She places her hand over her heart and whispers, "I'm listening," because the number doesn't scare her anymore. It reminds her that heaven still remembers, even when she forgets. Part 4. Why your soul feels tired when your body's rested. Phoenix, Arizona. A city that never truly cools down, even at midnight. The fluorescent lights of Mercy West Hospital flicker down long corridors. The graveyard shift is quiet, except for the occasional code blue and the prayers whispered behind surgical masks. Why am I still tired? Elijah wasn't just tired, he was spiritually hollowed out. Every morning after a 12-hour shift, he'd drive home with his windows down, trying to stay awake, not from physical fatigue, but from a deeper weariness in his bones. He slept, but he never rested. Even after 7 hours, he woke up feeling like he'd been somewhere doing something but couldn't remember what. It wasn't burnout, it was battle. When dreams feel like war zones, he began noticing strange patterns. Every time a patient coded, he'd have déjà vu like he'd seen it before. Sometimes he would say the exact phrase a family member needed before they even opened their mouth. It wasn't intuition, it was preparation. And some nights he swore he heard a voice while he slept, a voice that wasn't his own. Elijah, they're not just your patients, they're your assignments. The prophet in the hospital bed. Mr. Kennedy had been unconscious for 3 days. Then at exactly 3:03 a.m., he sat upright and looked Elijah square in the eyes. Psalm 91:11 he whispered, then lay back down. That verse, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Elijah nearly dropped the vitals chart. He hadn't told anyone, but he had prayed that exact verse just the night before out loud in a dream he didn't remember until now. It was as if his dream spoke through someone else's mouth. The truth he couldn't explain, Chloe. The new nurse laughed when he told her, "You're overworked. It's just your brain misfiring." But Elijah knew better. This wasn't misfiring, this was message delivery. He wasn't just dreaming. He was being assigned missions, soul to soul, spirit to spirit, while the world thought he was simply resting. Your sleep isn't still, it's strategic. That night, Elijah prayed in his car before entering the hospital. God, I'm tired, not in my body, in my soul. But if I'm being used in my sleep, I surrender. Just help me know I'm not crazy. He walked into the hospital, first hallway, first patient. On the whiteboard above the patient's bed, "You are not crazy, you're chosen." A volunteer had written it during their shift. Elijah nearly wept. Now when Elijah wakes up tired, he doesn't resent the fatigue. He thanks God for the battle. He thanks God for the night assignments. He thanks God that even while his body rested, his spirit was walking through rooms his mind couldn't yet comprehend. Because that's what happens when you're chosen. You don't sleep just to escape. You sleep to engage in realms where only heaven keeps score. Part 5. Your dreams were hidden to protect. What heaven is growing Chicago, Illinois. A cold winter storm wraps the city in silence. Snow falls against old apartment windows in slow, sacred sheets. Inside a third-floor walk-up, a space heater hums beside a pile of unopened journals. When you're afraid to dream again. Lily stopped writing down her dreams 2 years ago. Too many nights ended in terror. Dark visions, twisted faces, unspoken warnings. Her pastor said it was spiritual warfare. Her therapist said it was trauma response. She didn't know what to believe anymore. So she stopped praying for dreams, stopped journaling, stopped expecting heaven to speak. But the ache never left. It curled beneath her ribs every time she heard a worship song. It pulsed in her palms when she walked by a stranger and knew they were in pain. It whispered, "You were never supposed to silence your gift. You were supposed to protect it." When God hides you from you. One night, as the wind howled outside her window, Lily lit a candle and opened the one journal she hadn't burned. She flipped through old entries, dreams from years ago, a field with no sun, a staircase made of fire, a white lion that only blinked once. She had written them in tears, hoping for interpretation. But now she read them differently. They weren't nonsense. They were prophecies she wasn't ready to carry back then. God hadn't erased her dreams. He had sealed them, because if the enemy had known what she was carrying, he would have destroyed her before she ever understood it herself. Naomi's letter. As she flipped to the back of the journal, a note fell out. A folded letter, yellowed, taped to the back cover. She had forgotten it was there. It was from Naomi, her old mentor. Lily, if you ever feel like God stopped speaking, remember this sometimes. He hides his messages inside your very bones. When you're ready, your soul will unlock what your mind forgot. Don't fear silence, it's sacred protection. Lily collapsed into sobs because she realized the silence hadn't been punishment. It had been preservation. The wound wasn't the end, it was the womb. That night she dreamed again for the first time in months. She was standing barefoot in the snow, but she wasn't cold. Beneath her feet, a garden pulsed green, alive, glowing beneath the frost. She looked up. A voice said, "The seed is still growing. I buried it for your protection. Now, it's time to remember what I planted." She woke up with tears and a scripture etched into her heart, Isaiah 55:11. "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty." Forgetting was never rejection. It was refinement. Lily stood in her tiny kitchen the next morning, eyes still swollen, tea steeping, and said aloud, "I'm not broken. I was buried." The difference hit her like wind. What she mistook as abandonment was actually holy encryption. God hadn't let her forget the dream to punish her. He let her forget so the enemy couldn't weaponize it. Because what heaven plants, it hides until it's strong enough to stand in the light. Lily doesn't chase her dreams anymore. She walks like she's already carrying them, because she is. Every forgotten detail, every sealed scroll, every whisper in the dark was not lost. It was planted, and now it's starting to bloom. Part 6. The blueprint you think you lost is hidden in your spirit. Brooklyn, New York, a small church above a bodega. The sanctuary smells like old pews, anointing oil and paper-thin Bibles. Rain taps the stained glass windows as the city sleeps. When you lose the map you thought was yours. Malik used to hear from God every night, dreams so vivid they made him weep. Visions with faces, scriptures, even full sermons. He'd wake up, preach them on the streets, and feel alive. But that was before the heartbreak, before the accusations, before the silence. Now he just dreams of dust. Gray rooms, closed doors, empty notebooks. "I think he left me," Malik whispered to Pastor Elias one rainy evening. Or worse, "I lost whatever I was carrying." The wisdom you didn't lose, the blueprint. You became it. Elias didn't argue. He just slid an old Bible across the table, opened to Deuteronomy 29:29. "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us." Then he said softly, "God didn't erase the blueprint, son. He just moved it from your mind to your spirit." Revelation isn't always mental, it's internal. Malik walked home with that verse echoing inside him, and that night, something strange happened. He didn't dream of fire, he didn't hear a voice, but he woke up different. He began to know things again, not in his thoughts, in his instincts. He would pray for someone and later learn they had needed it at that exact hour. He would open his mouth and scripture would pour out scriptures he hadn't read in years. The blueprint wasn't gone. It had been downloaded deeper. You were always meant to become. The scroll weeks later, during a small Wednesday night prayer circle, Malik stood to share a word. But this time, no notes, no prep. He just opened his mouth and a message flowed out of him like water breaking through a dam. People wept. Chains broke. Even he was stunned. Afterward, someone asked, "When did you memorize all of that?" He smiled, tears in his eyes. "I didn't. I lived it. When you stop reciting and start revealing." Malik finally understood he wasn't called to remember the dream. He was called to become the message. He was the scroll. He was the sermon. The dream didn't return because it had never left. It had just moved inward, sealed under layers of pain, purified by silence, and now released in power. Malik doesn't need to chase visions anymore because the blueprint is alive in his breath, his footsteps, his choices. He's not preaching from memory. He's revealing from alignment, because that's what happens to the chosen ones. You stop quoting the dream and you start walking like it's already been fulfilled. Part 7. You're not dreaming for information. You're dreaming for transformation. Nashville, Tennessee. A modest recording studio tucked behind a coffee shop. Dim amber lights. Sound panels on the walls. Not fancy, just holy. The kind of place where songs are born in secret. Song that wrote itself. Faith had stopped trying to make hits. The world didn't want her sound. Too raw, too holy, too honest. But that night she woke up at 4:11 a.m., soaked in sweat. A melody was still echoing in her chest, haunting heaven-like. She scrambled to her piano, eyes blurry, and played the 4 notes still ringing in her bones. Then words flowed, words she didn't write. They tried to bury me, but the soil remembered my name. When dreams sing louder than words. She played the track for Andre the next morning. He froze, face pale, eyes wet. "Where did you get that line?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "It came in a dream." He left the room and returned with his old lyric journal. Flipped to a page from 7 years ago. Same line, almost verbatim. He had written it in rehab but never shared it with anyone. "Faith, you're not dreaming to get information," he said, trembling. "You're dreaming to awaken something that was already planted in both of us." Transformation is not memory, it's manifestation. That night, Faith stared at her ceiling and asked, "God, one question. Why did I forget the rest of the dream?" And the answer didn't come in words, but in atmosphere. She felt it in her bones because it wasn't meant to be remembered. It was meant to be revealed through obedience. She wasn't supposed to sing the dream. She was supposed to become the voice of what had been hidden. When songs become scrolls. A week later, she sang that song at a small open mic night at a church in East Nashville. No one clapped. No one shouted. But afterward, people wept. One woman came up and said, "That song healed something in me I didn't know was broken." Faith knew then that wasn't a melody. That was a message coded in her DNA. It had waited years buried in dreams until she was ready to carry it with reverence. God doesn't send dreams to impress. He sends them to transform. Faith still doesn't remember the full dream, but now she doesn't need to, because every time she opens her mouth and sings with surrender, the pieces return not as memory, but as presence. And the dream manifests itself in the hearts it heals. She realized heaven's dreams aren't for collectors, they're for carriers. Faith doesn't call herself a dreamer anymore. She calls herself a messenger, because now she knows she wasn't given dreams to analyze. She was given dreams to embody. And the song that came in the night, it didn't stay a song. It became an assignment wrapped in sound, one that still moves through every room she enters. Part 8. Your forgotten dream will return as a calling, not a memory. Santa Fe, New Mexico, a quiet desert retreat. Sand-colored adobe walls, red rock horizons wind that carries ancient prayers. The silence here is not empty. It's expectant when your dream disappears without saying goodbye. Pastor John hadn't dreamed in almost a year. Not the kind of dreams people laugh about in morning conversations. He meant the dreams, the ones that held purpose, wait fire. Since retiring early after his church scandal, false but fatal, he hadn't felt the presence of God in his sleep. He prayed, fasted, waited, still nothing. Maybe I missed my moment, he told God one night. Maybe the dream left because I failed. When the dream comes back through someone else's mouth, it was Maria who brought it back. She walked into the adobe kitchen one morning with her journal pressed to her chest. "Papa," she said, eyes wide, "I saw you in my dream last night. You were standing in fire, but it didn't burn you." John froze. He had dreamed that exact dream 30 years ago. He had written it in his own journal, but had long forgotten it or buried it in shame. "What else did you see?" he asked softly. "You had scrolls in your hands," she said, "but they weren't paper. They were glowing, like messages waiting to be released." John couldn't speak. The dream hadn't returned as memory. It had returned as a messenger. What God seals, he sends back in season. That night, John sat alone in the desert wind. No church, no pulpit, just dust and stars. And he prayed not for memory, but for alignment. "God, if you've sent it back, I receive it, not to hold, but to obey." And as he closed his eyes, he didn't dream images. He felt fire in his bones, the kind that doesn't whisper. Remember, it shouts, "You're up, it's time." The scrolls were never lost, just sealed. He began to write again, not sermons, blueprints. He couldn't explain them. They flowed faster than thought strategies, names, warnings, visions of cities and voices he hadn't met yet. Maria peeked at the pages and whispered, "These don't sound like you." He smiled. "That's because they're not. They're what God hid in me all those years. And now they're waking up." A dream isn't meant to be held. It's meant to be handed off. John's greatest dream wasn't something he remembered. It was something he lived into through pain, silence, failure, exile. The dream had returned, but not as nostalgia. It returned as calling, as urgency, as assignment. And when he stepped back into ministry, it wasn't to rebuild his image. It was to release what had finally matured inside him. Now, when people ask if he ever got his dream back, John smiles. "I didn't get it back. It got me back when I was ready to carry it with holy fear." Because for the chosen, forgotten dreams don't return as stories. They return as seasons of divine acceleration. And when they do, you don't explain them, you embody them. Part 9, Heaven only lets you remember what you're ready to obey. Kansas City, Missouri. A weathered revival tent sits at the edge of a vacant lot. Rusted folding chairs, old speakers buzzing. It's not polished, but God isn't waiting for polish. He's waiting for surrender. The delayed answer. The dream you weren't ready for. Eva had a vision when she was 10. A white gate, a voice that said, "This scroll is not for now." She woke up crying and told her father, who patted her head and said, "Maybe it was just a dream." So she buried it, went on with her life, became the good church girl, quoted the right scriptures, smiled through silent confusion. But inside she always wondered, why give me a dream you won't let me keep? Why God seals until obedience aligns? At the revival tent, she didn't expect anything. She only came to serve food, to stack chairs, to hide in the background, until Brother Ray paused mid-sermon, looked directly at her and said, "The gate you saw wasn't for your childhood. It was for your commissioning." Her heart stopped. She had never told anyone about that dream. "You weren't ready to obey what came after the gate," he said softly, "but you are now." God doesn't waste what he conceals. After the service, Brother Ray pulled out an old, wrinkled notebook. Inside was a prophecy written in 1994. It described a young woman with fire behind her eyes, who would one day unlock the next wave of prophetic messengers. At the bottom in faded ink, "She will know the gate when she sees it." Eva wept. It wasn't just a dream. It was a timed release, a spiritual scroll sealed until her obedience caught up with her calling. Memory follows maturity. In that moment, more memories began returning, not all at once, but layered like petals unfolding. Scenes, colors, whispers, the gate, the scroll, the phrase, "Call them out." It all came back only when she was ready to act on it. Not when she was curious, when she was committed. God hadn't forgotten, he had simply waited for alignment. Heaven holds back what you're not yet ready to steward. Eva stepped to the mic the next night. No notes, no script, no fear. And when she opened her mouth, it wasn't her voice. It was the sound of heaven remembering. People didn't just cry, they awakened. Brother Ray whispered from the front row, "Now the gate is open." And Ava knew she hadn't just remembered the dream. She had become the key that unlocked it for others. Ava's life didn't get easier after that night, but it got louder in the spirit. Now she wakes not hoping to dream, but praying to carry what God has sealed for such a time as this. Because she knows heaven's dreams don't return to the curious, they return to the commissioned. And when they do, you don't just remember them, you run with them. Part 10. You didn't lose it. You're living it. Los Angeles, California, a rooftop at dawn. The skyline blushes gold. Cold coffee on the table, open Bible on the lap, and a soul finally still. After years of restless striving, the dream didn't vanish. It transformed. You used to chase your dreams like they were drifting clouds, always one step out of reach. You journaled every vision, tried to decode every symbol, asked every prophetic voice for an answer, but it never felt like enough. You blamed your memory. You questioned your worth. You wondered if the silence meant failure. But now something different is stirring, because maybe, just maybe, you're not supposed to remember the dream, because you're already living it. You no longer need a map. You've become the route. You wake up and don't hear words. You feel weight. You don't see scrolls. You feel pull. Places that used to feel like home now feel too small. Conversations drain you unless they carry eternity. That's not exhaustion. That's spiritual evolution. You haven't lost clarity. You've outgrown the old kind of clarity. You used to ask God to show you the path. Now He's asking you to walk like you already know it. The truth you've been remembering with your spirit, not your mind. Maybe you didn't forget your dream. Maybe it was absorbed so deeply into your spirit that now it guides your instincts more than your intellect. You feel it when you walk into a room. You sense it in what you can't explain but can't deny. You can't describe the blueprint, but somehow now you're building from it anyway. Because for the chosen ones, the dream doesn't return in words. It returns in presence. You are becoming the evidence of what God once spoke. You are the fulfillment of a whisper someone else forgot they heard. You are the prophecy someone else once wrote and buried. You're the answer to a prayer you don't even remember praying. And all this time you thought you were waiting on the dream. But heaven was waiting on you to become solid enough, surrendered enough, aligned enough to let what was hidden in you finally take over. This is no longer about dreaming, it's about becoming. You don't need to chase confirmation anymore. You are confirmation. Every scar, every detour, every forgotten moment was divine layering. Now your voice carries authority, not because of what you recall, but because of what you've endured. You don't walk in memory, you walk in manifestation. So the next time you wonder where the dream went, don't look back, look inward, because you didn't lose it. It didn't vanish. It wasn't stolen. It was planted, protected, watered, hidden, and now it's rising in your decisions, in your presence, in the way the atmosphere shifts when you enter a room. The dream isn't coming back. It never left. It's just been waiting for you to become it. The dream was never lost. It was waiting for you to align. You were never just meant to remember your dream. You were meant to embody it. The world taught you to chase clarity, to write it all down, to explain it, to post it, to prove it. But heaven doesn't work like that. Heaven speaks in fire, not formulas. It hides what is holy. It encrypts what is eternal. Because when the enemy is watching, God seals what he plants until it's safe to grow. And you, chosen one, you've been growing in secret. Every tear you cried without explanation. Every morning you woke up heavy, but blank. Every time you said, I know something happened, but I don't know what. That wasn't madness. That was spiritual memory leaking through the veil. Heaven has never forgotten you. God did not let your dream disappear. He buried it so deeply inside your spirit that only obedience could bring it back. You didn't forget it because you were disobedient. You forgot it because you were in training. You were being refined, not for performance, but for presence. Heaven doesn't reveal to impress. It reveals to entrust. And now, after the silence, after the nights of wrestling, after the months of wondering if you were crazy, broken, or unworthy, you're not just remembering, you're being released, and the fire that's been stirring under your ribs. That's not emotion, that's not coincidence. That's God saying the seal is breaking, the assignment is awakening. What if the reason you forgot the dream was because it wasn't meant to be seen but lived? Are you still asking God to bring it back in images, or are you ready to walk in the movement it became? Because here's the mystery: when God gives you the dream again, it won't come as a vision, it will come as a door, and you will have to decide. Will you walk through it if this message stirred something in your soul? If your spirit whispered, "This was for me," then I invite you to respond, not just receive. Drop this phrase in the comments: "I'm walking in what I forgot." Let that be your declaration. Let it echo in the spirit realm. Let it confirm to heaven that you heard and you're ready. Share this message with someone who's been asking God for clarity in the silence. They don't need more information, they need alignment. And if you're still standing after all these hidden battles, write this in faith: "I still stand by grace." Because that's what you've been doing, standing, waiting, trusting. And now it's time to move. Not because you remember everything, but because heaven remembers you. And if you believe this message is part of a greater movement, one that's awakening the chosen across the globe, support this mission not out of obligation, but out of alignment. Every act of faith, every shared word, every quiet yes becomes part of the divine ripple. So stay close, because the next story, it will go deeper. It will speak louder, and it might just carry the next piece of the scroll God has hidden in you. Until then, may your sleep be sacred. May your dreams be encrypted with glory, and may your life become the revelation heaven always saw in you.